Hey guys, welcome to Earth Science. We're going to take a minute and talk about what Earth Science is. When you signed up for the class, you probably had an idea about what Earth Science was. Maybe you thought we would talk about volcanoes and earthquakes and stuff like that, and you're absolutely right. You see, you study Earth Science to understand the phenomena that happens on Earth. Phenomena that's just like an observable event or a process or something that happens. And what kind of phenomena happen all over the Earth? You got volcanoes, that's a big scale, a large scale phenomena. You also have river systems and oceans. You have large pieces of moving earth. Maybe you've heard of plate tectonics before. You have forces that build mountains. There are also smaller forces at work, destructive forces. And we're going to take a look at all of these systems throughout the year as we get into Earth Science. Now, I said the word systems, and that's important because Earth is a system. Earth isn't just a solid body of rock that's sitting out there in space by itself. It's a machine that has parts that interact with one another. It has parts on the surface that interact with parts underneath, and vice versa. It's got parts from the inside of Earth that interact with things on the surface and in the atmosphere. And we're going to take a look and we're going to see how Earth acts as a system. For example, weather systems. That's a whole system in itself. I mean, everybody looks at the weather reports and know what to wear, if it's going to be hot, if it's going to be cold, snowing, raining, hoping for a snow day. Maybe you look at water systems. You've been to Lake Michigan before. Maybe you've been to the ocean. That's a water system. And that water system interacts with the Earth. We have an atmospheric system. We get our heat from the sun. The sun warms up our atmosphere. Our atmosphere is structured into layers, and it acts as an independent system. And we also have physical systems, like volcanoes and earthquakes and our natural resources that we dig out of the ground and use, like coal, oil, natural gas. All these things are Earth systems, but the thing is that they all interact, they all function together. They're not all independent. And in order to be able to understand those systems, you're going to hear some major themes that come up repeatedly throughout the entire year. You're going to hear about like cause and effect themes or cause and effect relationships. When water's in the atmosphere, it rains. When the rain comes down, it affects things on the ground. There's a cause and effect relationship there. People on Earth and animals on Earth that breathe, they were exhaling carbon dioxide. That's the living stuff affecting what's going on in the atmosphere. That's a cause and effect relationship. We're going to talk about matter and energy systems. We're going to talk about how we get heat from the sun and how when that heat comes down, it helps a lot of other systems function and operate. We're going to talk about how matter flows within the Earth and flows out of the interior of the Earth out to the surface, and how that affects other systems as well. We're also going to talk about processes, lots of processes that happen. We're not just going to talk about what something is, but we're going to get into the processes about how things happen. The Earth is a big place. And in order for us to understand how all these systems interact on and in the Earth, we're going to break the Earth down into 4 basic components or 4 spheres. Those 4 spheres constantly interact with one another, and they're responsible for a lot of the cause and effect relationships, a lot of the flow of matter and energy that happens in and on the Earth, and a lot of the processes that we see and that we're going to talk about throughout the rest of the year, like volcanoes, earthquakes, etc. Those 4 spheres are this. We have the atmosphere. The atmosphere is simply the blanket of air surrounding the Earth. Some would call it the sky. Some people would call it the air we breathe. Then we have the geosphere. The geosphere is the solid Earth. It's all the rocks, the minerals. It's the Earth's interior. It's everything that makes up the continents and the ocean floor on the entire planet. We also have the biosphere. Biosphere is anything living. It's anything living in the Earth and on the Earth. You're a part of the biosphere. I'm a part of the biosphere. So are bugs and dogs, like my dog Abby. And then we have the hydrosphere. The hydrosphere is anything to do with water. When I say water, I think of like oceans and lakes and rivers and stuff like that. Now, what's tricky is sometimes you don't know what should go into which sphere. For example, these clouds up here in the sky. I don't know if you can see those, but these clouds, there's clouds out there. These clouds there they are. These clouds that are up in the sky. Well, those clouds are made of water droplets. Now, they're in the sky, which is the atmosphere, but they're made of water droplets. So are they a part of the hydrosphere or are they a part of the atmosphere? And to be honest, there's no one good answer to that question, which drives home the point that the Earth is a system and they interact. All 4 of these spheres interact. And it's these interactions of spheres that we're going to concentrate on throughout the course of this year. Let's take a look at the spheres in another way. So I'm hanging out here in the yard with Abby. There's Abby right there. Abby, say hi. Say hi, Abby. Now, Abby's a part of the biosphere, and so is this tree, and so are those plants over there. Anything living on Earth or in Earth, that's all a part of the biosphere. But the biosphere doesn't exist just by itself. You see Abby over here, we can take a look, and she's breathing. Right, Abby, you breathing? Yep, she's breathing. At least I hope she is. And as she's breathing, she's taking in oxygen, and she's letting out carbon dioxide. That's all part of the atmosphere, which is right up there. That's the atmosphere, that blue sky. But the atmosphere is all around us. When you're outside and you feel the wind, that's part of the atmosphere. When you're up in an airplane, you're flying in the atmosphere. So the biosphere doesn't exist by itself. It interacts with the atmosphere. Now, how is Abby interacting again? She's breathing. She's taking in oxygen and letting out carbon dioxide. The biosphere also interacts with plants. These plants right here, well, through photosynthesis, they're taking that carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and they're putting oxygen back in. That's a system. The system of the biosphere and the atmosphere working together. Now, the ground here, well, this is the geosphere. And the geosphere is giving a place for the plants to live. The geosphere is holding the roots. The geosphere is what the soil is made out of, all the rocks. Volcanoes are a part of the geosphere, mountains, the ground, all of that's a part of the geosphere. And that interacts with the biosphere as well. Now, the geosphere also interacts with the atmosphere. Picture a volcano erupting and all the gases that come out, all those gases are going into the atmosphere. Again, another system. And when a volcano erupts or when an earthquake happens or when the soil runs out of nutrients, then it also has the ability to affect the biosphere. Yeah, now the geosphere and the biosphere working together. Now there's also the hydrosphere. Now it's a beautiful sunny day out here, so there's no pooling water, and I don't live by a lake or an ocean, but the hydrosphere is all the water in and on Earth. Well, these trees, the grass, the plants, everything, that's all growing because of water as well. It pulls the nutrients out of the soil and the water helps it grow. Without the water, all these things would shrivel up and die. Eventually, they would suck all the nutrients out of the soil and no longer be able to survive. They need the hydrosphere as well, or the water, to be able to thrive and survive. The point is this, is your four basic spheres, geosphere, atmosphere, biosphere, and hydrosphere, all four of those interact together. They all affect one another, and a change in one can affect all the other ones. They are a system together. So independently, yes, they each have their own characteristics, but they can't survive independently. They all interact together. As we progress throughout this year, we're going to learn a lot about how those systems interact.